So, the next topic we are talking about is World Hindi Day. And how is it different from uh, Hindi Divas? We'll be looking into it because the word you have to keep in mind carefully that it's World Hindi Day and it's Hindi Divas. So there are two different issues we are talking here in the context of global arena, and this is the national recognition or celebration of the Hindi as language. The context is the permanent delegation of India to UNESCO announced that on the occasion of World Hindi Day, UNESCO's World Heritage Center has agreed to publish Hindi descriptions of India's UNESCO World Heritage Sites on WHC website. Analysis states that World Hindi Day is celebrated on January 10th every year. This is PT point. World Hindi Day. In the world, it is celebrated on January 10th every year, making the anniversary of first World Hindi Conference, which was held in 1975 at Nagpur and was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So these points are absolutely important from your prelims perspective. This era of 1975 was belonging to Mrs. Gandhi as Prime Minister, and it was the first World Hindi Conference which was held in Nagpur in 1975. So these two perspectives are important. Since 1975, the World Hindi Conference has been organized in different countries like India, Mauritius, UK, Trinidad and Tobago, United States, etc. World Hindi Day was first observed on January 10, 2006. Since then, it is celebrated on January 10 every year. UPSC has the tendency to ask the beginning of major events. For example, in 2015, they asked the BRICS Foundation year. So now, in this context, this World Hindi Day, when was it first observed, could also become a question. So it was observed first time in 2006, and it is always the celebration of first anniversary or the first conference of World Hindi in Nagpur in 1975. It is the marking or the speciality of the day is. Now, what is the difference between National Hindi Divas and World Hindi Day? National Hindi Divas is celebrated every year on September 14. Important. On that day in 1949, the Constituent Assembly adopted Hindi written in Devanagari script as the official language of the Union. This is the context of Hindi and also the issues related to linguistic problem in India. From here only this problem of linguistic issues also arose, because I'll explain it later. Let's just see the points what here are. Well, the focus of the World Hindi Day is to promote the language at the global stage. The National Hindi Divas, on the contrary, is held across the country at a national level, marks adaptation of Hindi written in Devanagari script as the official language of Union of India. So this marks the adaptation and this is the promotion. So if I write here, World Hindi Day talks about the promotion of Hindi at world stage, whereas Hindi Divas is the marking of adaptation of this language by Constituent Assembly in 1949, as it will be the Union's language to communicate and connect. Lesser known facts about Hindi language. The word Hindi originated from the Persian word Hind, which means the land of the Indus River. Hindi is the first language of around 430 million people around the world. Apart from India, the language is also spoken in, this is important for prelims, it is also spoken in Nepal, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Fiji and Mauritius. Hindi and Nepali share the same script, that is Devanagari. This Mauritius, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, okay fine, we have seen that Hindi is also spoken in these areas. But do we know the context that why Hindi is spoken there? at such a large extent? Because there was a concept called as indentured labor. Let me just write it here. Indentured labor system. What happens was, when Britishers were overruling the country, from states like Bihar, presently Jharkhand, Chota Nagpur Plateau, Uttar Pradesh, mostly the Bhojpuri speaking regions or the Hindi belt states, Britishers used to take the laborers to these places to work on different fields like rubber, plantations, fruits, tea and coffee farms. And over the period of time, these people have been living there since generations to generations. And after Britishers left their territories, and some of them became independent, sovereign, and whatsoever, those indentured laborers settled there and then only. This is how the majority of people of Bhojpuri language are basically living in Mauritius. And you would be amazed to know that litti chokha is one of the national state food of Mauritius. And Bhojpuri is spoken at a massive scale. And recently and of late, so many presidents and other dignitaries holding the constitutional positions were belonging to the Bhojpuri speaking dialect. There also Trinidad and Tobago, and if you see that cricket players from West Indies team, they also share the names with the Indian origin, like Rampal, Chandranarayan, all those names actually belonging and saying that these people have been belonging to India. And earlier the status of PIO, that is peoples of Indian origin, was also given to them. But after the OCI and PIO were merged, there's only overseas citizens of India is given to the foreign nationals of Indian origin as an identity card, so that we can actually have the diaspora involvement in the country's development. So these are the indentured laborers who were taken by the Britishers to those farms to work and whatsoever. Now, the gender aspects of Hindi are very strict. All nouns in Hindi possess genders, and the adjectives and verbs change according to gender. So Hindi is the language which specifically specify the words for genders, and it has a clear distinction. Many English words have been derived from Hindi. Normal general fact: chutney, loot, bungalow, guru, jungle, karma, yoga, thug, avatar, and so on. Hindi is a descendant of Sanskrit. Its words and grammar follow that of the ancient language. In linguistic terms, Hindi belongs to the Indo-Iranian subfamily of the Indo-European family of language. Hindi has been influenced and enriched by Turkish, Arabic, Persian, English, and Dravidian languages. So Hindi is a reformed version what we see now. I think in Hindi we call it as Apabhramsha. Yes, the earliest form of Hindi was called Apabhramsha, which was an offspring of Sanskrit. Apabhramsha basically is the revived form. From here only the Hindi started improving into what it is in present. Now in 400 AD, poet Kalidas wrote Vikramor Vashyam in Apabhramsha, important for prelims. Who wrote the book named as Vikramor Vashyam? The first book believed to be published in Hindi was Prem Sagar, also important. The book was published by Lallu Lal and depicted tales of Krishna. Prem Sagar. Under the Officials Language Act 1963, English is to be used for purpose of communication between the union and states which has not adopted Hindi as its official language. Dakshina Bharat Hindi Prachar Sabha, important topic, important point for prelims. Dakshin Bharat Hindi Prachar Sabha was established in Chennai by Mahatma Gandhi in 1918. The institution imparts Hindi teaching at various levels to anyone who enrolls for its program, because there is a language gap between the northern and southern states. Here Hindi is the majority speaking language, and here every state has their own ancient Dravidian language system. For example, Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada. Now, Article 351 of the Constitution provides that it shall be the duty of the Union to promote the spread of the Hindi language, to develop it so that it may serve as a medium of expression for all the elements of the composite culture of India, and to secure its enrichment by assimilating without interfering with its genius. That is the issue. It became the issue between the states of South India and North India based on linguistic lines. The people belonging to southern states during the 1960s and early 70s, there was an issue of language and their imposition. The southern states leadership actually felt that Hindi as a language belonging to the northern part of Indian states is being imposed over them, and unnecessarily the culture of the southern states would be minimized to minor. And in this way, the hegemony of Hindi speaking states, since Hindi is being given a constitutional status and also given as a duty to the Constitution of India, or sorry, Union of India by the Constitution under Article 351, that will become a problem while communicating political issues, and of course the major culture of the southern states would be dissolved in the color of Hindi. Also, when the central exams like, or all India exams like civil services taken by UPSC, when the headquarters are in Delhi and the languages were not that promoted and the materials were not promoted, and the other form of media communication and other system of messaging system was also not giving the equal weightage to the language of southern states, then it became an uproar in the society, and one or two students actually burned themselves alive in IIT in the 1960s. In Delhi, when the protests were going on, anti-Hindi protests, when we say that, and during this regime only, this DMK, that is Dravida Munitra Kazhagam, as a state party was started coming up, and actually it took birth in the late 60s against this anti or against this Hindi agitation. So when Hindi was given this constitutional status, that created a big problem, big mess in the society during that period. Therefore, Government of India also announced that the states have the authority, and states have all the duties and all the rights to implement their native language as the state language. But when it will be communicating with the union, then either use of English or Hindi can be taken up. In this context only, the three language formula was derived in the country. Therefore, this issue of language barrier and Hindi being a fear of imposition over the southern states was clearly taken up, and this is how it was resolved. So this Article 351 actually created a little confusion in the society, and that's how it was actually sorted out. In the Constitution, Hindi was declared as an official language, Article 343, and not a national language. This is important because these explanations were given later, that in the Constitution Hindi was declared as an official language, not the national language. And Raj Bhasha Gaurav Puraskar and Raj Raj Bhasha Kirti Puraskar are awarded to government departments and public sector units respectively for their contribution to Hindi by taking the use of Hindi in their official works, promotions, advertisements, and other notifications. Now, in a landmark decision, UAE has included Hindi as the third official language used in its courts, alongside Arabic and English, as part of a move designed to improve access to justice, because many people belonging to South Asia continents or states like Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, and India, they can understand Hindi, and majority of the people who are working at the lower blue collar jobs level in UAE are coming from these states, and therefore any issues if belonging to them in the courts of UAE can also understand that what is the sort of justice being delivered. This is actually an improved step or approach step taken by United Arab Emirates to improve the concept of inclusivity in the society. India has reportedly formed the largest immigrant community in the UAE with more than 3 million living in Dubai itself. About 38% of the inhabitants of Fiji are descendants of Indian laborers, as I said, brought between 1879 and 1916 to work on Fiji sugarcane plantation. The official languages of Fiji are English, Fijian, Hindi, and these people are known as indentured laborers. These are the words actually generally expected in UPSC exam paper. So that's why I'm giving it you. Hindi is one of the 7 Indian languages that can be used to make web URLs. In 2011, 7 Indian languages, Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, Bengali, Tamil, Telugu and Urdu, have earned the distinction of becoming the only languages other than English, Russian and Arabic to support an entire web address written exclusively in them. Important for prelims. Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN, the body that governs website addresses, has allocated 7 domain names in each of these languages that can be used for local websites. This makes India the only country to have 8 domain extensions besides .in that already exist. So India is the only country to have 8 domain names. An important distinction and achievement by India. India will also be the first to have a domain extension in Urdu ahead of Pakistan, whose official language is Urdu. So this is basically another step of making Indian society an inclusive society, that we have domains available in Urdu languages as well. .Bharat domain, the National Internet Exchange of India, NIXI, and the Center for Development of Advanced Computing, that is CDAC, have collaborated to launch .Bharat domain in Devanagari script. The .Bharat initiative was taken up for non-English speaking people because almost more than 50% people in India, they are not English adhered people. Currently, one can find content in various languages online, but the URLs or web addresses are in English. With this rollout, people can now type the URL in local languages. That actually promotes the communication, integration, easy availability of information, because India is the country which provides the cheapest data in the world. And almost 80% of Indians are using smartphones. Thanks to Sam Petroda, who brought the mobile revolution in the country post 1995. So in this manner, when we have smart gadgets, when we have cheapest data, so that should be the comprehensive environment of making available and delivery of knowledge system. And as Abdul Kalam once said, that this knowledge is the newer wealth of any society, and if knowledge pool is empty, then the youth will not have any sort of direction that where the country should be taken to. Because late Indian president, late ex-president Dr. Abdul Kalam was very much influenced, and in the book written by him, The Wings of Fire, he specifically mentioned that the contribution of youth, given the information system more stronger, more enabled, the youth can take this country to the new potentials. Now, the digital divide, by encouraging generation of local content, it will minimize the gap between India versus Bharat. So this was all about the Hindi as the promotion of Indian languages, and Hindi, World Hindi Day and National Hindi Divas, and what the controversies actually Article 351 brought, 353 I guess. Yeah, 351 of the Indian Constitution brought, and how the states actually retaliated against it, and what sort of ruckus we see in this state, and now what are the initiatives taken by the country to make Indian society and the knowledge delivery system more inclusive. So this is all we covered in this article, and this will be actually providing you support and while you write the answers. Thank you so much.